We're back in the book of Deuteronomy, and overall theme for this book is loving the God who loves you. Unless you are depressed or just a pessimist, you probably overestimate yourself. You and I may see ourselves as better than we really are, especially when we compare ourselves to other people. Christians certainly are not immune to this tendency. We can look down on sinners or saints who are struggling or have fallen and think that we are above such things. Then, bam! We hit a rough patch in our own spiritual journey and we get humbled. Has that ever happened to you? Unfortunately, there are those who think that since they're Christians, they are entitled to God's blessings. Israel had that mindset as they were preparing to enter the promised land. The Lord reminded them, or had to remind them, of three things in Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 1 through chapter 10, verse 11. And we need to be reminded of these same three things as well. So the title of the message today is pretty revealing. It's called Stiff-Necked. So turn with me to Deuteronomy chapter 9, and we'll begin at verse 1 as we uncover three things that we need to be reminded of, even as the children of Israel needed to be reminded. Deuteronomy chapter 9, beginning at verse 1. Hear, O Israel, you are to cross over the Jordan today and go in to dispossess nations greater and mightier than yourself, cities great and fortified up to heaven, a people great and tall, the descendants of the Anakim, whom you know, of whom you heard it said, who can stand before the descendants of Anak? Therefore understand today that the Lord your God is He who goes over before you as a consuming fire. He will destroy them and bring them down before you. So you shall drive them out and destroy them quickly, as the Lord has said to you. Do not think in your heart after the Lord your God has cast them out before you, saying, because of my righteousness the Lord has brought me in to possess this land. But it is because of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord is driving them out from before you. It is not because of your righteousness or the uprightness of your heart that you go in to possess their land, but because of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord your God drives them out from before you, and that He may fulfill the word which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now the first thing that the Lord is reminding His people as they prepare to go into the promised land is this. They didn't earn the promised land. They didn't earn it. The verse begins in verse 1 of chapter 9. Hear, O Israel. Now that should bring you back to Deuteronomy chapter 6. The great Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. You remember that? Amen. Hear, O Israel. When that was stated, it was God saying, I want your full and undivided attention. Because what I have to say to you right now is of utmost importance. Hear me. He also said this in chapter 5, verse 1, and chapter 4, verse 1. And so when we find it here, in chapter 9, verse 1, Hear, O Israel, this is something that you need to be reminded of. And what was it? In verse 2, he talks about the giants. You remember in an earlier sermon, we found out that God was the giant killer. Do you remember that? And so he's reminding them that the land that they're going into, there are giants in the land, but God's going to take care of those giants. You don't have to worry about what you're going to face when you get into the promised land. All the people around there, what can you do? How can you stand before the children of Anak? But look at what verse 3 says. He who goes over before you as a consuming fire is the Lord. And I told you before that there's a difference between God being a consuming fire and God being a refining fire. A consuming fire means it gets all burnt up. That's a fire of judgment. There is nothing left. But a refining fire is that which makes what is impure pure. And so every child of God should want God to be a refining fire in their life. Never, ever ask God to be a consuming fire for you. I shared with you before that song by James Cleveland, where he said, I long so much to feel the touch of his consuming fire, to be used by God in my desire. Well, that was the wrong kind of fire. It's not consuming fire, because the consuming fire is the fire of judgment. The Lord is saying here that He's going to go before the children of Israel into the land of Canaan as a consuming fire, as a fire of judgment on all those nations who refuse to believe in God. And so He's going to bring judgment on the Canaanites. Why? Because of their wickedness. Because of their refusal to turn to God in faith. They would rather worship idols than the true and the living God. But what we see here is that God is going to be a consuming fire. He's going to drive them out, but the children of Israel have work to do too. They have to fight the enemy. Now God has already assured them of victory. God's doing His part, but they have a part to do too. They're not just going to walk in the land and God has burnt everybody down, and they just walk through the promised land. No, He's coming as a consuming fire, a messenger of judgment on the people. He's going to take the hard fight out of them, but they have to do their part and fight against the Canaanites. But why is He doing this? When somebody tells you that you have a victory, that the battle's already won, you can go around and strut and think that you're hot stuff. I'm going to win. So it's just like the Super Bowl is coming, and whatever the two teams wind up being in the Super Bowl, I'm sure both sides are going to feel, hey, I got this win. All I have to do is show up. The victory is already assured. The Lord is saying, not so fast, Israel. You're going to have ultimate and complete victory when you go into the promised land. But it's not because you're so good. Don't think it's because of your righteousness. Don't think it's because you are qualified. Don't think that you have earned this. You haven't earned anything. The reason why you're going to have the victory is because of the wickedness of the people that are there. Do you understand what God is saying to the children of Israel? I'm giving you the land of these people not because you're so righteous, but because they're so wicked. But not only that, He says in the end of verse 5, because I'm going to fulfill my word to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So God says, I'm giving you this land because the people are wicked and because I'm going to keep my promise. But He emphasizes to them twice, in verse 4 and in verse 5, that it's not because of their righteousness. Now, you are a child of God today. You are a believer in Jesus Christ. Is it because you're hot stuff? Did you earn it? No, we're not good enough to be saved. And so we don't deserve anything from God. You think you deserve good health? Do you think you deserve wealth? Do you think you deserve influence and power? You don't deserve anything. I don't deserve anything. But whatever God gives to us is a demonstration of His love and grace. I'm so glad that when we pray to Him, He does give us good health. I'm so glad that when we have a need, He supplies our needs. Not all of our wants, but He supplies our needs. Why? Because that's the kind of God He is. It's not based on me, it's based on Him. And so when I go around thinking that God owes me something, I hope you never say that in your life. God owes me. You know, sometimes in our relationship with other people, we say, you owe me. I've been good to you. As a parent, you say to your children, you owe me. I changed your diaper. I fed you when you couldn't feed yourself. I gave you a place to stay. Now that I'm getting up in age, you owe me. You better come through. Can you ever say that to God? God, you owe me? God doesn't owe us anything. And anything that He gives to us is totally out of His grace, love, and mercy. Amen. Never, ever forget that. So the next time you're praying, you're asking God for something, and God, from your perspective, hasn't come through, don't stick out the bottom lip saying, God, what happened? I thought we had this squared away. I thought we had a deal here. You know, I go to church, I read my Bible, so how come I'm having all these problems? God doesn't owe us anything. But He's working out a greater, far greater purpose than you and I can see right now. And sometimes it's that hindsight 20/20 vision that we get when we look back and we see what God was doing. When we're going through it, we can't see. All we can see is the mountains. All we can see is the potholes. All we can see are the problems. But don't ever have the mindset that God owes you something. When He saved you and me, that was all He had to do. He didn't have to do that. But He did that. And if we get nothing else on this earth, you got your ticket to heaven. And you should be rejoicing in that fact. You may not be able to get out of your bed. You may not be able to pay your bills. You may have trouble on every side. But take heart. One day you're going to leave this world and you got a wonderful place waiting for you in heaven. Not a mansion, as some people say. I wouldn't want a mansion anyway. I wouldn't know what to do with a house bigger than me. Now, I want a room in God's house. So that when I open up my door, I see Jesus. And I see all my friends and loved ones who are in heaven with me. So, you know, you get a mansion, you're gonna have someone way over in the corner because you don't want to be bothered with people. I don't want no mansion. Just give me a room in this house. But please understand, God doesn't owe us anything. But there's a second thing that He had to remind the children of Israel. They were rebellious. They were rebellious. Beginning at verse 6. Therefore understand that the Lord your God is not giving you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are a stiff-necked people. Remember, do not forget how you provoked the Lord your God to wrath in the wilderness, from the day that you departed from the land of Egypt until you came to this place. That's 40 years. You have been rebellious against the Lord. Also in Horeb, you provoked the Lord to wrath so that the Lord was angry enough with you to have destroyed you. When I went up into the mountains to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant which the Lord made with you, then I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water. Then the Lord delivered to me 2 tablets of stone, written with the finger of God, and on them were all the words which the Lord had spoken to you on the mountain from the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days and 40 nights that the Lord gave me the 2 tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant. Then the Lord said to me, arise, go down quickly from here, for your people, like the local boy is stated, your people whom you brought out of Egypt have acted corruptly. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded image. Furthermore, the Lord spoke to me, saying, I have seen this people, and indeed they are a stiff-necked people. Let me alone, that I may destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven. And I will make of you a nation mightier and greater than they. So I turned and came down from the mountain burned with fire. And the 2 tablets of the covenant were in my 2 hands. And I looked, and behold, you had sinned against the Lord your God, had made for yourselves a molded calf. You have turned aside quickly from the way which the Lord had commanded you. Then I took the 2 tablets and threw them out of my 2 hands and broke them before your eyes. That was symbolic of the fact that they had broken the 10 commandments with their actions. And I fell down before the Lord as at the first 40 days and 40 nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water because of all your sin which you committed in doing wickedly in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. For I was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure with which the Lord was angry with you to destroy you. But the Lord listened to me at that time also. And the Lord was very angry with Aaron and would have destroyed him. So I prayed for Aaron also at that time. Then I took your sin, the calf which you made, and burned it with fire, and crushed it, and ground it very small until it was as fine as dust. And I threw its dust into the brook that descended from the mountain. Also at Taberah and Massa and Kibroth-Hattaavah you provoked the Lord to wrath. Likewise, when the Lord sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, go up and possess the land which I have given you, then you rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God, and you did not believe him nor obey his voice. You have been rebellious against the Lord from the day that I knew you. They were rebellious. They were stiff-necked. They were provokers of God to wrath. And Moses revisits with them the sins, the big sins that they did. The first was the golden calf incident. In the golden calf incident, they ran quickly to follow idolatry. God had just given them the 10 commandments verbally and called Moses up to receive the 10 commandments on the tablets of stone. Moses was gone just 40 days and 40 nights, a little more than a month. And during that time, they said, where's Moses? We don't know what happened to that dude. And where's God? We haven't heard from God. God, Moses, 40 days. Excuse me. We don't know what happened to them. So Aaron, you are the leader right now. You have to make us a God that we can see. Because we don't know what happened to Moses, and we can't see God. And so Aaron, like a chump, instead of confronting the people, said, all right, give me all your gold. They brought gold, and he threw it in the fire, and he molded a golden calf. Now, if you want to be kind of nice to the children of Israel, you might say, well, they formed the golden calf to be an image of the true and the living God. That's being nice to them. But you see, the first 2 commandments say what? I am the Lord your God. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. And so, God says you can't picture me. You can't capture me in any kind of image. And anything that you make and worship is not me. And so they were worshiping an idol. And Aaron, the high priest, was in on it. He was the one that formed and fashioned it. So quickly, in a little more than a month, they had dropped their following the words of the Lord after they had made a covenant to obey God. It didn't even last a month. Now, before you so hard on them, have you been stiff-necked? Have you had an area in your life you know to be wrong and say, okay, Lord, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to drop this thing. Did you last 40 days? Did you last 1 week before you fell back? The children of Israel, they were in a critical place where their faith was tested during those 40 days, and they blew it. They went back into idolatry. They went back into unbelief. They didn't believe God's word. And then he mentions, and that, by the way, is the big sin of Israel. Every Jew would go back and they would talk about the golden calf incident as being the big sin of the Israelites. Then he mentions Tabra, where they complained against God in Numbers chapter 11, verses 1 through 3. When we went through the book of Numbers, one of the things that we saw as a repeating pattern was that the children of Israel complained, rather than seeking God in prayer. They would complain. Why don't we have this? They would murmur. Why don't we have that? How come we don't have water? How come we don't have meat? No, it's all this and all that. So at Tabor, they were complaining, and God sent a fire and burned some that were outside the camp. At Massa, when they complained about not having water, that's where Moses struck the rock and water flowed the first time. Because they were thirsty. Oh, God brought us out into this wilderness to die. Not one of them said, Lord, we need water. Will you provide? No, they accuse God. You just want us to die first. There's a difference in your attitude, right? You go to somebody's house and you say to them, could I have a glass of water? They'll give you a glass of water, right? When you go to somebody's house with your tongue hanging out, and you haven't said anything, and then you leave the house and you go tell your friends, I went over there, and people didn't give me nothing to drink. They ain't no good. Well, I'll never go back over to that house, but you never made a request. You never said that you wanted something to drink. That was the attitude of the children of Israel. They were quick to complain, but slow to pray. And then he mentions Kibroth Hattaavah, where this is Numbers chapter 11, verses 4 through the end of the chapter. And I laugh about this is because, you know what they complained about? They complained about the manna. God provided them manna, food from heaven. And they said, we're tired of this manna. I want me a cheesesteak. I want me some meat. And so God did provide them the quail. And they had so much that they got sick. And God just allowed a plague to run through them. But just complaining people. They were complaining. But then the final ones, the two big sins. The first is the golden calf. The second is at Kadesh Barnea, where they refused to enter the promised land. The 12 spies were sent out. 10 came back with a bad report. Caleb and Joshua came back with a good report. And, they were supposed to go to the promised land. And they said, no, we're not going there. There's giants in the land. We're like grasshoppers in their presence. We can't go into the promised land. And so they refused. And that's why they remained in the wilderness for 40 years. And that generation died out. So those are the two big sins. And so God is reminding the children of Israel, don't think that you're going to the promised land, the second generation. Don't think that you're going to the promised land because you're so righteous. You are stiff-necked people. You are rebellious. You're stubborn. Whatever I tell you to do, you want to do the opposite. So don't think that you're going into the promised land because you're hot stuff. Because you're not. Well, what about you and me? How often do we complain? And how often are we stubborn? Let that sink in a little bit. We can complain to one another about what we don't have. How it seems like God is blessing everybody else, but He's not blessing me. Well, why are you telling me that? Talk to God. Like I'm going to be able to change this situation? The one that you're concerned with, the one that you're upset with is God. Be honest with God. You say, Lord, I don't understand why I'm struggling like I am. You see, you may be surprised by the answer He gives you. He may tell you to look in the mirror of the Bible. There may be something in your life that's not right. That He's not going to move with favor in your life until you get that right. Or maybe He won't tell you. Because He has a purpose and a plan that He's working out, and He needs you to go through this. Maybe He is refining you. But rather than moaning and complaining about it, talk to the Lord. Tell Him about your struggle. He already knows, but sometimes it's, as they say, psychological terms, it's cathartic. You get that release. You let it out of your system, and then God can really begin to deal with you. Because sometimes we hold some junk in our hearts, and we don't want to say it because it doesn't sound right for me to say I'm mad at God. So I'll kick the dog. I'll take it out on my wife. I'll let my kids have it when I'm really angry at God. Tell God the truth. He already knows what's in your heart. But sometimes when you say, look, I'm angry because I don't understand why I'm struggling. And I'm just going to pour my heart out to you. Lord, help me to understand this thing. And then God has a way of speaking to your soul, doesn't He? But we got to be honest with Him. So, the third thing that He needed to remind the children of Israel was that God was gracious. God was gracious. Verse 25 in chapter 9. Thus I prostrated myself before the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. I kept prostrating myself because the Lord had said He would destroy you. Therefore I prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord God, do not destroy your people. Remember, the Lord said to Moses, your people. So Moses puts it back and says, do not destroy your people and your inheritance, whom you have redeemed through your greatness, whom you have brought out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do not look on the stubbornness of this people, or on their wickedness, or their sin. Lest the land from which you brought us should say, because the Lord was not able to bring them to the land which He promised them, and because He hated them, He has brought them out to kill them in the wilderness. Yet they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out by your mighty power and by your outstretched arms. In chapter 10, at that time the Lord said to me, hew for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and come up to me on the mountain, and make yourself an ark of wood. And I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke, and you shall put them in the ark. So I made an ark of acacia wood, hewed 2 tablets of stone like the first, and went up the mountain, having the 2 tablets in my hand. And he wrote on the tablets according to the first writing, the 10 commandments, which the Lord had spoken to you in the mountain from the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly, and the Lord gave them to me. Then I turned and came down from the mountain and put the tablets in the ark which I had made. And there they are, just as the Lord commanded me. Now the children of Israel journeyed from the wells of Bene Jakin to Mosera, where Moses died, and where he was buried. And Eleazar, his son, ministered as priest in his stead. From there they journeyed to Gudgoda, and from Gudgoda to Jotbathah, a land of rivers of water. At that time the Lord separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord to minister to him, and to bless in his name to this day. Therefore Levi has no portion nor inheritance with his brethren. The Lord is his inheritance, just as the Lord your God promised him. As at the first time I stayed in the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, the Lord also heard me at that time, and the Lord chose not to destroy you. Then the Lord said to me, Arise, begin your journey before the people, that they may go in and possess the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Now, don't miss what's going on. Moses intercedes for the children of Israel. God could have destroyed them. God was in his right to destroy them. God said that he would build a new nation starting with Moses. But he listened to the intercession of Moses. Moses prayed for the people. Moses said, Lord, these are your people. You are the one that brought them out of Egypt. I am concerned about your reputation, Lord, because if you don't take them into the promised land, Egypt and all the other nations will say, oh, God couldn't do it. He couldn't deliver them, so he just destroyed them out in the wilderness. Now, we know that God doesn't need a pep talk. God didn't need that information, but it showed the heart of Moses. He was concerned about his people. And he was willing to plead for his people. Now, you know, if God wanted to destroy them, there was nothing that Moses could say to keep that from happening. But it's a demonstration of God's grace that he did not destroy his people. He heard the prayer of intercession from Moses, and God acted favorably. And so we see that God allowed them to move through the wilderness until they got to the place where they were that day, where they were just a stone's throw away from entering the promised land. Why? Because God is a gracious God. Why? Because God is a God full of mercy. Why? Because God is a God of second chances. You see that? He gave them another chance. And that's the message that we should get from this too. That God gives us second chances. I say that because some of us are so stiff-necked that it winds up being third, fourth, fifth, and 10th chances. And so, as the children of Israel are prepared to go into the promised land, they needed to be reminded that they were a stiff-necked people. They needed to have a good dose of humble pride. But that speaks to you and me too. Remember this. We don't deserve God's grace. We don't deserve God's grace. But he gives it to us abundantly, doesn't he? We must be truthful and admit our sin. To admit that we're stubborn and stiff-necked. We often pursue our own will rather than God's will. But it is dangerous to assume that God is going to be gracious to us. So it doesn't matter what we do. We're children of God, so it doesn't matter. God's going to pour out his blessings on us anyway. But you keep thinking like that. That's being stiff-necked. Repent and ask God to help you to obey him and to do his will in that area of your life. Think of where you have been stiff-necked. Think of where you are stubborn. Think of where you have wanted your way. I don't think you have to go back too far in your life. Maybe there's something right now in your heart where you know that you're stiff-necked, that you prefer doing your will to God's will. Ask God to help you to overcome being stiff-necked. My friend, God will judge the wicked. I can tell you this, you don't want God to be a consuming fire. I urge you today to believe His Word, to believe in Jesus Christ, that He died for your sins and rose again the third day. Admit that you're a sinner. Repent of your sins.